Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my first update on my experience with the Maingear Vector Pro. This is a 17.3-inch gaming powerhouse here in 2021, currently priced at $2,300. I will include a link in the description. That is, of course, before tax. Micro Center is the only place you can find this, either directly or through their Amazon store. It's a little bit more expensive at Amazon, but you will not find a machine with similar internals for this price. So what are you getting? Well, the 17.3-inch QHD 165Hz IPS panel that you're looking at right now, an Intel Core i7 11800H 8-core CPU, 32 gigs of RAM, an NVIDIA RTX 3080 with 16 gigs of VRAM, 165 watt TDP, a 1 terabyte Samsung NVMe Gen 4 drive, and Windows 10 Pro. And of course, Thunderbolt 4, micro SD card slot reader, HDMI 2.1, the list goes on. It's pretty amazing. 4-zone RGB keyboard, so no per key, numerical keypad, performance mode button, power button, Windows Hello with the webcam front and center at the top, 720p. But let's start off with this IPS panel. Take a look and a listen. Now, brightness is not at 100% right now. I can flex that pretty easily. There you have it. Speakers are at 100%. They don't get that loud. They are down firing. So I think you can already tell the display is excellent. This is the same QHD 165Hz panel you'll find from any manufacturer, but arguably, I think in one of the nicest chassis. This is essentially Intel reference design, so Maingear puts their name on it. It's marketed through Micro Center. The warranty is carried through Micro Center. Maingear will give you phone support, but Micro Center is responsible for everything else, so be aware of that. I'll talk more about that in the full review to clarify any questions anyone has, at least as far as I can be helpful. This was not a review unit. I purchased this with the hopes that this would be essentially the replacement to my Asus G15. Not essentially sure yet whether or not that will be the case. Granted, there is a big performance difference, but I'm still not at that point. So let's take a look at those benchmark results. You can see 11,631 on TimeSpy. Now this has ranged, let me take down the brightness because it is getting pretty blown out. This has been essentially a range of anywhere from 11 to 12,000. I've never hit the 14,000 best that you see there, and that's because even though this 3080 is getting 165 watts and the 230 watt power brick is more than enough to power this thing, this is such a thin and light machine at under 5 pounds that I've got to believe the thermals just don't permit that 165 watts to really flourish, because with the Omen 17, which has a 3070 140 watt TDP, that machine benchmarks very close to this. It comes in at a little under 11,000 most times that I run TimeSpy, anywhere from 10 to the high 10s. So, you know, when you put those side by side, this looks like less of a value, but if you value, not to be ironic, thin and light, and the overall form factor, you're going to want this machine over something like the bulkier HP Omen 17. That's if you also don't care about the Omen's better keyboard, better I/O, and in my opinion, in some ways, better build quality, even though I really love this overall, the feel, the matte finish, a lot less fingerprints on this, and you know, there's nothing, it's totally subdued. You would not know this is a gaming machine. It looks like strictly business. I prefer that in every way. Not that the Omen doesn't look that way as well. Let's talk about the SSD. The 1 terabyte Samsung NVMe Gen 4 drive performs well. It's not the fastest drive. Consistently, the benchmarks are under 7,000, so I'm pretty sure this is not the 980 Pro that comes with the Omen 17. that's one of the few drives where you are going to bench. This one right here, over 17 or over 7,000 on at least the read side of things. But there's nothing wrong with this drive. No one's going to need to replace it. But if you want to, you can. There are 2 slots. In my case, if I do end up keeping this, clearly I'm going to throw in a Sabrent Rocket 4 terabyte plus Gen 4 drive and an 8 terabyte Rocket Q in the secondary slot and make this thing just a monster workstation. So again, the 3080 makes this more powerful than anything in its class, but remember, you can find other 17-inch large format 3080 gaming machines that will outperform this, but they will be 2 to 3 pounds heavier and likely $1,000 more. And that will be all for collecting, you know, a little bit more performance, not that much. So I think this is really impressive. If you're going to get this, I think the 3080 model is the way to go because, again, even though I haven't tested the 3070, we know that it is not going to blow away something like the HP Omen 17 that has the 140 watt chipset as opposed to the 125 that the Vector Pro has. Now, the Vector Pro also comes in a 15-inch model with a 240 hertz full HD display, silver color scheme as opposed to this black. I prefer this machine, not because of the color scheme, but I want that. I believe the QHD 17-inch 165 hertz panel is the sweet spot, whether you have the 3070 or the 3080. I'm just not interested in full HD. Anyone who follows my channel knows I prefer 4K, but this GPU wouldn't be able to handle it, so I think this is a perfect pairing. Now, I can't say that about the 3070, but the 3080, absolutely, at least the little bit of gaming I've done so far, this thing is amazing. Fans do get loud, but not that loud, and I will tell you another thing. Stock with this, you get Maingear software, but I actually uninstalled the Maingear node because it did not give control of the TDP on the GPU. Now, Electronics, which makes the exact same build with or without their own branding, it's up to you, but they're also significantly more expensive, and they don't currently have these components. They don't have the 11th Gen i7. Their node software, they don't call it the exact same thing, basically gives you all of the same controls. It's the exact same layout because, again, this is a reference design laptop, so this software is stock to whoever wants to brand it and essentially tweak it, and they can make some decisions. For whatever reason, Maingear opted out, at least I didn't see an option in the overclocking department in order to control the actual voltage. So that's where I said, let's see what happens if I put the electronics on it, and it worked. And you can see right there, configurable TGP target is 150 watts, and of course the dynamic boost 15 watts. And you know, this thing performs, again, you will not find something that is going to give you this sort of raw computing power in such a thin and light profile. It's just not going to happen. So it's pretty amazing. I'm very impressed with it so far. Whether or not this is, again, going to be my next machine, I need to spend more time with it. But everything is really nice. Display, overall performance. The keyboard is not my favorite. I love that we've got a clean copy of Windows 10 Pro installed. No crap, no bloatware. And Maingear, whether you know it or not, is a high-end boutique builder out of New Jersey. I've done a custom build with them in the past. They're expensive. Some will argue they're worth it. Their customer support is very good, but remember, Micro Center, who's also good, is who your warranty will truly be with. Only phone support will be with Maingear. It's a weird thing to describe, but that's the way it is. This will chew up and spit out any game you want to play. I haven't installed Cyberpunk yet, but I anticipate 60 frames on this panel is going to be a cinch. And then output, I expect to be able to play quite a few games in 4K, not at Ultra, but pretty close to 3070 desktop performance, which is amazing, again, from a laptop. And just to go over, again, the form factor, fit, and finish, I really do like this chassis more than any other on the market. The Maingear logo does not bother me in any way, so I don't feel like it needs to go. And it doesn't collect fingerprints. I mean, how much better could it be? It's magnesium alloy with some plastic. Not a perfect machine. I'm not saying in any way that it is, but it is really, really nice. So right there, 2 USB A ports, micro SD card slot, some ventilation. On the back, that's where the action is. You've got your Thunderbolt 4 port. I do wish that we had more than one of these. This does not have power delivery, so you cannot charge the machine through this port. Hopefully next gen we'll see that. HDMI 2.1 output, so that's where you're going to be sending the NVIDIA output for 4K gaming. This is the integrated graphics based on the Intel chipset. Ethernet, and then the actual power cord, which right now, from what I'm seeing, takes a little under roughly 2 hours to fully charge this thing, which I think is pretty good. And then on the other side, as I just try to move this around for you, more ventilation, a Kensington lock right there, and another USB-A port, and then dedicated mic and headphone jacks. And that's it. The only other thing you should be aware of is that there is a little bit of RGB lighting right here that runs, but that I'll save for the full review. I mean, I've pretty much covered everything that you probably would want to know about this. Again, just remember, you will not find, I mean, look at the thickness, or I should say thinness. This is just crazy that there's a 3080 in here. 32 gigs of RAM, which if I do end up keeping it, I'll bump up to 64. I may even benchmark that just to see how well it ends up running, how, you know, if that really changes the results. But it's just hard to believe this is $2,300, and in addition to that, has hardware that would easily surpass $3,000 from any manufacturer. And Maingear isn't a bad name. It's a good name. It's just not one that is household. Any questions or comments? Oh, one other thing, battery life. Right now, it's looking like 4, maybe 5 hours with the GPU turned on. It's probably more like 3 to 4. And then if you turn the GPU off, you're looking at probably, I would say, somewhere between 6 to 7 hours. But I need more time with it. But that's a good rough estimate that's realistic. And that's obviously not with the brightness of the display cranked all the way up. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe, and please stay safe. Later.